Hi everyone. In today's conversation with authors, surprise, we have Joe Abercrombie back to the channel again.
Like a bad smell, impossible to get rid of.
Dear God. so,
Loitering in the background, always.
so, Joe, the last
Yeah,
time you were here, it was for the release of The Wisdom of Crowds. So that's about,
it's about 6 weeks
2 years?
ago, feels like to me.
Oh,
Something
so
like
soon,
that.
huh?
It's a while, isn't it? What is it, 3 years?
3 years, right?
4 years?
Oh, really?
Yeah, maybe. It's a
Wow.
while anyway. It's the longest break I've had in my publication ever, I think,
Mm.
since the Blade itself came out. Yeah, it's been a long gap.
So it wasn't like this for the Shattered Sea?
No, it wasn't. I mean, it feels like that was a gap. There was certainly, the first law books came out yearly, more or less.
Mhm.
So they were all out within 2 years. And then I think there was maybe an 18-month sort of gap before Best Served Cold came out. And that felt like a
Uh,
long time, but the
uh,
three standalones all came out pretty quickly. And then there was maybe a year or two before the Shattered Sea came out, but they all came out within a year. Um,
mm,
And then there was a gap. Then there was like a 2 or 3 year gap before the Age of Madness started, but then they all came out yearly as well. So this has been the longest gap I've had. Yeah.
well, now it's going to be out, The Devils. How are you feeling about
Well,
this?
I kind of don't know how I feel about it. It's been a really long lead up for this book, much more than they usually are. I mean,
yeah.
because it was something new. I wasn't sure how long it would take. I wanted to make sure I'd have plenty of time to get it all right. When we
Mm.
negotiated the contract, I kind of made sure there was a big gap, and we put this date in May 2025. I think when we did the deal, it was 4 years away, probably.
Mm.
But it felt like, give us plenty of time, and if the book's done early, we can always move the date back a bit, and bring it out earlier.
Ah.
And the book was done. It could have been out a fair bit ago, I suppose, technically. But
Yeah.
once the date is there, it
Cannot
kind of
change it.
takes on this. Yeah, it takes on this inertia, especially in the US. In the US, it's a big market. It's very distributed. There's lots of people to kind of get on board. So it's sort of a big machine that takes a lot of time to grind into motion. And once the date's there, it becomes sort of hard to move. So we ended
Ah.
up with this date, and as a result, it's been an awfully long time coming. And now
Yeah.
it's suddenly, very close. Yeah, it feels kind of strange. I've forgotten what's in the book. I've kind of been working on other things, and
Oh
it
no.
feels. I've spent a lot of time talking about kind of art and merchandise and events, and the content has slightly drifted away. So forgive me
well,
if I act as though I haven't read it.
I know that's really bad though, because the next question I will have to ask you to tell us a bit about the Devils.
Oh no! Oh jeez. Well, it's a book made of pages with
Oh,
characters
nice.
and plot in
Bestseller
it.
guaranteed.
Yeah. Well, I suppose tell you a bit about it. I mean, from a strictly plot point of view, it's about a set of monsters that the Pope keeps to deal with the problems the righteous are not fitted to handle.
Nice.
And in this particular story, they have to convey a thief who may or may not be a long lost princess to take up the throne of an empire,
Mm.
facing various problems along the way. That's the kind of plot, if you like. But
Yeah.
really, it was an attempt by me to write something episodic and fun and a bit. Is silly the right word? It probably is the right word. A little bit
It's fun.
silly.
It's
Yeah, I
fun.
mean, the fun was the word. Fun was the word I was after. I suppose the first law stuff, is not without
Mm.
comedy,
Yeah.
but it's quite heavy. It's quite cynical. It's quite dark in places, and this is quite cynical in places as well. But I suppose the aim was to focus a bit more on the kind of action and the small group, and not have so much kind of geopolitics and big plotting, and to be more in the moment. kind of action adventure. It's action
Yeah,
adventure comedy.
yeah. I've
It's
read
sort
this
of
one 8 months ago, I think. It's been a while
right,
for me as well.
right. Yeah, it's almost as long for you as it has been
Yeah.
for me to see it come out. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Um,
so by episodic though, this means that probably the sequels will focus on different characters then, right?
yeah, I mean, up to a point. I suppose it's like it's something like Slow Horses. If you've seen that show, that was kind of that
I haven't
wasn't.
watched that.
Yeah, I mean,
Is
I
it good?
suppose in the sense that it's a group of characters that is
Okay.
tackling a different issue in each book, and there's some rotation in the group. There are a few principals that stay, and then others come in, others come out, and some come to the fore, and others kind of move back into the background in different times. So the aim was to kind of with the Age of Madness, say that was like a big, complicated
Yeah.
trilogy, which is all one story, a lot of interconnected characters, a lot of events, a complicated world that's had a past in other books and so on. So there's a lot to think about and get right.
Yeah.
I wanted to write something where I could be a bit more, I could dip in and out of it a little bit more. There wasn't the same amount of pressure of, getting everything correct and trying to make everything come together. It's a little bit more in the moment, a bit more ad hoc, though obviously still superb.
Yeah, of course. It is
Of
superb.
course. Yeah, absolutely.
But even in that context, you still managed to write so many characters, so many point of view characters, quite a lot, I think, in this book. Well, not point of view, but a lot of focus on these characters. People are saying that this is like Suicide Squad. I guess that's kind of like a good comparison. And
Is
who's your favorite character to write here? Why is it Balthazar?
no, that's interesting. You should say that. I suppose it's like when people ask this question, "Who's your favorite character?" and I always feel it's like asking which is your favorite ingredient in the cake.
Yeah, oh, nice.
Is it the baking powder or is it the icing sugar? The ingredients aren't anything without the other
Mm,
ingredients, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
And so
yeah, yeah.
there are ones that are kind of easier to write. I
Mm,
think in this case, there's it's a group of monsters, and within the group of monsters, there are a couple of more normal people.
yeah.
So Alex, who's the kind of the heir to the throne, and Brother Diaz, who's the sort of hapless fool who's put in
Yeah.
charge of this clown show.
The dude suffers a lot.
They both suffer quite a bit, and they have the scales lifted from their eyes quite a lot. I mean, and because they're more normal, and there's quite a lot written from their point of view, they probably have more page time than a lot of the others do.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of trickier to write. They probably develop more as well. Whereas
Yeah.
some of the monsters, there's a werewolf, there's a knight cursed with immortality, there's an invisible elf, and they are kind of comic relief is possibly the wrong word, but they come in small doses, and often they're somewhat of a one-trick pony,
Mhm.
or they have a certain strong flavor that is great in small amounts, but you wouldn't want to base the whole book around them necessarily. And so they
Yeah.
can be fun to write because they come in to do a specific thing, and they don't have to do much heavy lifting of driving the plot or developing much themselves as characters, and so they're often fun. But I don't think there's a favorite because they all contribute and they all kind of spark off each other. I think writing a kind of mismatched group of weirdos has always been something I've quite enjoyed right from
Yeah.
the start. Some of the stuff that worked best in the first law is a mismatched group forced together. And I didn't have so much of that in the Age of Madness. And so,
Yeah.
one thing that I wanted to do with this book was get back to my roots of writing a set of mismatched weirdos taking the piss out of each other, fundamentally. That is the heart of this book, I would say.
Nice. Just like the first Law trilogy.
Yeah, absolutely. Write what you know.
Exactly. And unlike the first Law, though, the world in the Devils is kind of like our world, I guess. Some even consider it a historical epic fantasy. Do you find this easier or more challenging to write?
It's meticulously involved, researched and developed historical fantasy of the kind that Hilary Mantel or Robert Harris writes. I feel like I'm in that tradition. I suppose I'd written in secondary worlds a couple of times, and I felt like it was something slightly different to try.
Mhm.
And it's both at the same time set in our world and is
Different as well.
completely kind of lacks any rigor in the world
Mm.
building whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea was very much to have a world that feels like a kind of bizarre fever dream. I don't want
Mhm.
it to become. I don't want it to be a world where you could ever have lists of dates or lists of popes and the things they achieved in their reigns and things like that. Because I want it to be a backdrop against which weird stuff happens. You know, I
Ah.
like the idea of it being almost impossible to pin down. And you know, it's self-evidently silly. It's not intended to be rigorous alternative history. There's a certain strand of alternative history where, you know, what if the Nazis won the
Yeah.
Second World War? What if, you know, Rome had lasted till the present day? That kind of thing, which is great. This
Yeah.
is much more ad hoc and silly. You know, it has everything in there. It has Atlantis. It has Carthage beating Rome in the Punic Wars. It has Troy beating the Greeks in the Trojan Wars. You know, and it's not really supposed to be a cunning thought experiment. It's just throwing a lot of stuff at the wall.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
maybe
the
that makes it
elves.
sound bad. I should say that it is rigorously researched.
No, it's not bad.
Obviously, a fantastic tapestry, very
Yeah.
carefully woven.
And you made the elves in this one kind of like the enemy here, but one of the
Mm.
supporting characters or main characters is an invisible elf. Was there any
Mm.
particular decision to make this elf invisible, mostly invisible anyway? Because I don't think I have read any fantasy book with an invisible elf yet.
There you
Yes,
go. I mean,
yeah,
known for
the
my
devils.
innovative originality. You know, always refashioning the genre since
Yeah,
2006.
yeah, fresh
I
new
don't
voice.
know. Honestly, don't know exactly where that idea comes from. Often people ask you, where does this idea come from? And you think, I don't
Yeah.
know, where does that idea come from? I don't know. I suppose
It just came.
it just came, yeah, maybe. I can't even pinpoint where the first
Mm,
notion came from. I suppose you know, you're always in a group of this kind trying to balance the different types of character and get a range of different voices and different talents and different styles of person.
mhm.
The werewolf and the vampire are kind of in the classic werewolf and vampire mode, possibly
Yeah,
up to a point.
yeah.
So the elf's a bit weird. I mean, she's kind of weird. All the
It is.
characters are sort of weird, one way or another. But she's definitely an outsider and a fish out of water. Elves are
Mm,
despised and feared, and they're kind of the existential threat of this world that the elves are on the border waiting to, well, eat mankind.
yeah,
They're obsessed with
yeah.
eating mankind, obviously, as elves are. I suppose I just like the idea of elves being this weird and unknowable horror. But Sunny, the elf in the story, is kind of probably the nicest person in it in many ways.
Yeah, she's super kind.
Yeah, yeah. Unlike some of the
And
others.
yeah, and speaking of vampires earlier, did you actually put that dumpling in Poland randomly or just something that you've tasted in Poland?
I had them when I was in Poland.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. I forget the Petrovsky. I've forgotten exactly what they're called. But yeah, I
Style.
had them. I had them in Poland when I was in Poznan. They took me
Mm,
to a traditional dumpling place, and I had the dumplings.
yeah, I
And
can't.
so I don't know. It was on my mind for some reason. I think as well. You know, you get a lot of Western Europe in fantasy.
Yeah,
You get
yeah,
an awful
totally.
lot of Western Europe, but you don't get a huge amount. I mean, The Witcher obviously is the kind of really well-known
Mm,
Polish-inspired fantasy, but you don't get a lot of kind of Czech things, Polish things, Belarusian things,
yeah,
which of
that's true.
course were just as much part of medieval Europe as the Western bit of it. And so, you know, just vaguely interested in sticking some of that culture in there,
I
in
think
as stupid and superficial a way as any of the rest of it is handled, obviously.
it's amazing though. I think many people will really love that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. You never really know what will strike
Yeah, stick.
people and what they'll despise. You know, I'm sure
Yeah, true.
there'll be things about this book that people find intensely offensive. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, yeah. Would you say it's risky though for you to, let's say, write the Devils first instead of focusing on going back to the first law world? I mean, I know that many fans of you will be definitely looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it is.
Mm-hmm.
From a strictly kind of commercial publishing standpoint, which of
Yeah.
course you're always thinking about. It's one
Yeah.
of the range of things you're thinking about when you decide to write a book. I mean, the safe thing is certainly to keep writing in a sort of established world.
Yeah.
But I do think, you can overdo it. You can give people too much of what they like. It's a good idea from the reader's point of view to give them different stuff, and it's a good idea definitely from your own point of view to try different things and keep yourself interested. I don't know if I could just turn out a first law book every year.
Oh yeah.
50 years. I think it'd be diminishing returns for me, certainly, and for the readers probably. So I think it's good to try different stuff, and within the first law books I've tried different stuff up to a point. You could just continue to write Logan Ninefingers books endlessly, and there are always people who email me going, "When's the next Logan Ninefingers books coming?
Yeah.
How about Young Bayaz? How about a Young Bayaz series?" And, I feel like it's always diminishing returns when you plow the same furrow over and over and you get into prequels and things. It's almost a bit of an admission of defeat sometimes. I can't think of something new I want to try. So you've got to move on. There's a risk to trying new things. There definitely is, but I think there's also a risk to sitting still. There's a risk creatively and a risk commercially. And if you want to reach out and try and grab new readers and expand your readership, you kind of do need to try and do something a little bit different. But it's about mixing, what's familiar, what's worked before, what you're relatively good at, with some new stuff as well. I mean, you don't necessarily want to do something radically and totally different that doesn't give readers any of what they expect from you.
True.
So it's sort of pushing things in a slightly different direction, but not necessarily radically. But yeah, there's a risk, and of course there'll always be people who don't like a given book. I mean, I take a kind of perverse pride in the fact that no one really agrees on what my best book is or what their favorite book of mine is.
Oh yeah, that's
quite
true.
a lot
of very contested.
Yeah, it's very contested, and it's pretty broadly spread. You could find someone who'd make a case for pretty much every book I've written.
Yeah,
all the first law books certainly as their favorite. There are people who really don't like the Age of Madness at all as a whole. There are people who don't like one book or another out of the Age of Madness, and there've always been people who have bounced off my stuff right from the start. So yeah, there's a risk, but I think whenever you write a book, there's got to be a bit of a risk there. And the things one reader loves might be the things another reader hates, so you can't worry too much about what the readers will think. It's obviously would be hugely depressing if everyone despised this book or it was widely disliked. But in the end, you've got to write what you want to write first, and then hopefully readers will agree.
Yeah, even from my point of view, like when I was working for the Devil's Broken Binding Edition together with you, even I knew that based on the interior illustrations and also cover art, I'm sure that some people, even though many love it, and I'm really happy with the result, but I'm sure that some people will not like them as well. But we cannot approach this kind of stuff thinking that, you know what, these few people will dislike this. We just have to do our best, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been fascinating working on, because there've been quite a few different editions of the Devils, and it's kind of a sign of the times in the industry that it's become a really big part, the subscription model and the kind of special editions model and the sprayed edges and all that stuff. And so seeing a lot of different kind of takes on the material has been sort of fascinating. So, the one you guys did, I suppose, is closer to, well, traditionals may be wrong, but it's more of an epic fantasy treatment with a sort of classic piece of art up to a point. Whereas the main edition is more of a graphic kind of general fiction type of book. And there's another edition that is kind of very much a sort of gothic romance kind of treatment.
Oh, okay.
Very, very
Romance.
different again. Also
Okay.
very cool. And so it's kind of, you've got to, in a way, pick the audience you're going to aim to appeal
Yeah.
to. And clearly, Broken
Agreed.
Binding have a certain, quite a specific, probably epic fantasy tilted kind of market. And so they're making an edition that suits their market. And, that makes absolute sense. And it's kind of fascinating to see it sold in different ways to different audiences.
Yeah, and speaking of special edition, this has changed a lot, right? Since the time you were the Blade itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and for that matter, it changed enormously since the Age of Madness, actually.
Really?
So, I would say. Yeah, because Blade itself came out in kind of 2006.
Yeah.
And back then, not long after that, I did an edition with Subpress.
Yeah.
And that was, obviously, those are sort of in the, I suppose, $50 to $200 or $300 kind of range. And those were with their own art and things. And that was quite a niche, limited market. And now there's become this whole area of, editions that use the standard book block, so they don't reset the text or anything. They're using the same pages that the standard hardcover has, but with a new cover, with a sprayed edge, with a special board, with all kinds of different special stuff. And that whole model of subscription, the kind of stuff that Illumicrate are doing, that Broken Binding are now doing, that's really appeared over the last 5 or 10 years and has become a big part of the landscape altogether. Because especially for debut writers, if you get picked up by one of those big subscriptions, it's transformative. Straight away you might have sold 10,000 books, which is gigantic for a first week for a debut.
True.
So it's been it's a huge thing, and it's really exciting in many ways to kind of see a lot of different subscription models arrive, and for them all to be pitching their own style. And I can remember working with Goldsboro books, which I've been for years now, and they obviously started doing, I think I'd have been signing 50 hardcovers for them, and then 50? It was then it was 100, and then it became 200 with a numbered page, and then it became 500 with the sprayed edge. And this time around, it was 2,000 with their own cover and their own boards. And now there's a load of other people also, like Waterstones now take a copy with a particular different cover with their own boards with some different stuff inside, and it's just become a whole new field and a new market. And I think not necessarily, readers will buy several copies sometimes. Readers will often have an audio book, a standard edition to read. Maybe they'll have the ebook as well. Maybe they'll get one or two of the. I get emailed by people saying, "Oh no, now I've got to buy another edition." Probably got 5 or 6 books, and then I'm working with Curious King as well, who you probably know, ultra high end kind of.
I love their books, amazing.
Oh, they're incredible, but again, it's a totally different market. Their top end ones are. He's doing stuff for $10,000. Some of these, super limited things. Which I would never have thought there was a market for, and there certainly wouldn't have been 10, 20 years ago. But now you can sell out a whole run of letterpress books at, £100 or whatever a shot.
Yeah.
It's really transformed.
It's quick. The sellout is super fast.
Oh, half an hour, yeah.
Yeah, and it's gone. That's it. I'm like, wow. Yeah.
And then they're reselling it for kind of 3 times the.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. It's really been it's really transformed the market. It's become a very interesting kind of new part of the market. And I suppose at the same time, general bookstores have kind of there's some degree of resurgence in the kind of high street bookstore as well. Because I can remember when I first was published, the big concern was that Waterstones in the UK would take over everything because they'd just taken over Otter's, which was another kind of high street bookshop. Okay. And everyone was supporting plucky little Amazon. These new disruptors. Yeah. With a chance to, set up something on the other side of the behemoth that is Waterstones. And now, of course, Amazon kind of all powerful, but the ebook, it felt like the ebook was going to take over completely, and then suddenly it didn't.
Yeah.
You know, ebooks become its own part of the market, a very important part, but paper books are still very significant. They stepped up the design, they kind of stepped up the physical object, and it doesn't look to me like paper books are suddenly going to vanish. In fact, they're
Thriving.
diversifying into all these different editions and different types, and particularly in fantasy and sci-fi, where you have a very committed reader base. I think it just works really well for that audience.
Yeah. And in terms of launch, I guess The Devils is the first time in your career that upon launch, it immediately launched many special edition as well then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, previously it's been, as I say, we've done stuff with Goldsborough, but on a much smaller scale. This time around, it's the Goldsborough took, I think, a couple of thousand. Then there were 3,000 or 4,000 of the Waterstones won.
Wow!
Can I say how many Broken Bounding took? Would they want me to say that?
I actually forgot, but it's thousands as well.
It's 10,000, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it signed a lot of books. I mean, it signed a lot of books.
Wow!
And then in the States, I've been working with these guys, Lit Escalates, who do stuff with Pierce Brown and others, and they're doing kind of signed copies bundled with other bits and pieces, and they've done artwork for the internals of the book, which I think is a really cool and exciting.
Oh, they're
thing.
Gorgeous. They're
amazing, yeah, and like a really different sort of look, and they really suit the book really nicely. So that's been really great to do, and it's the first time I've done anything like this scale on release, and it's the first time I've been kind of touring in the States as well. So I mean, it's looking like a really kind of exciting thing, but obviously you don't quite know till you get out there. The line between exciting and terrifying is always a little bit of a fine one.
Come on, you're a big name now, Joe.
Well, you say that it never really feels like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it does up to a point, but also when you're doing something new, I mean, every new book, you get confident about the old stuff because its sort of position gets established, and but new stuff is always worrying. You don't know how it will go down, and you get early opinions and you get kind of early readers, but that's very different to it sort of going out into the market and being chewed on by the readers,
directly
the public. Exactly. You just don't know how it'll go down, so we'll see. As I say, I mean, there's always people who don't get quite the thing they really loved about that other book of yours, and the more books you write, the less is the chance this one will be their very favorite thing of yours. But I hope it'll kind of capture some level of a new audience as well. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, you will be chatting with some really big authors as well, like George Martin and Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah, I mean, I've never heard of George Martin. I think maybe it's an exciting debut they've got going. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing the people they've got. It's like it's the people you'd pick if you could pick anyone. George Martin, Brandon Sanderson, Robin Hobb, and then there's guys like. Yeah,
you have that shirt, right, with George's face, I think?
I did. Unfortunately, I threw it out.
Ah, damn it.
It would have been perfect, but it is not the most breathable fabric. 30 seconds in that, and you are literally, it's like wearing a wetsuit.
Oh my God.
Running with sweat.
So not fun, man. So not fun.
No, it was not something that I've worn a huge amount, I'll be honest. Yeah. Some fans gave that to me in Dublin one time, I think. Yeah.
Do you see yourself, let's say, right now, The Devils is planned to be a trilogy, right? Is it a trilogy? Yeah. But
yeah, I mean, I suppose it's 3 books.
Okay.
It's not terribly like The Age of Madness is a trilogy.
Yeah.
Start and an end as a 3 book, and this is a deal for 3 books, but there might well be more, that you could add single ones on, which was part of the appeal of this format. It's like a detective story in the sense, you have a Philip Marlowe story. You don't necessarily have to read them in order. Each one is a kind of self-contained thing, and it felt, that was a slightly different thing to try, which would be interesting.
Yeah, Robert Jackson Bennett is trying the same thing right now with his books.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if you heard The Tainted Cup. It's.
I mean, heard of, and I've met him a couple of times. Don't know his stuff super well, but a little bit.
He's starting writing something of similar nature, but it is a murder mystery epic fantasy, and it's very episodic. So each book will follow a different case, And this kind of thing, I think he can expand upon it. Like, I don't know how many books, and I guess that's the same thing for the Devils. At least the goal anyway.
Yeah, and it gives me time to do other things. I do quite a lot of screen stuff these days of one sort or another, and that work will kind of appear. You'll have a couple of months of working on something, and then it'll go away, and then without really much warning, it'll suddenly reappear, and you'll need to do a couple of weeks of changes on it. And so that can be quite distracting if you're writing something like Age of Madness, which is very dense and complex and has a lot of threads going on. And so it was, I wanted to have something that I could, write a chapter here, a chapter there, and make progress without getting disrupted by the stuff that's happening. So that was part of the idea.
Yeah. Are there good progress on Best of Cold adaptation? The one that you can say anyway.
Well, I mean, you never can say much. Not a lot of progress, honestly, right? Well, there is and isn't. So it was kind of really close to going at one point, which is not the first time I've been in that position.
Really?
So, yeah, really.
Okay.
And it's not close to going now. Let's say
okay. Yeah.
But it's certainly not dead. I mean, this is one of the both great and awful things about that business is that these things never quite die. They just sort of shamble on zombie-like. And the execs at one company will all get fired and move to another company, and then you have the chance to pitch the same idea to new execs or the same idea to the same execs in a different job, or and so things kind of go round and round and get recycled. And it's sort of moving towards another attempt to get it done now. But
okay.
I mean, just never hold your breath.
Yeah. Never. Until there is an official announcement.
And even then.
Oh, even then.
Sometimes. Well, things get half made and dropped, and I just don't count on anything these days.
Damn it. I would love to see that, though. I would really love it.
Yeah, I'd quite like to as well.
Obviously.
I'd quite like to get paid for the script that I
wrote. Oh, my God. But seriously, when the news came out, and also Rebecca Ferguson signed up to be the main character, it was so wild. So wild.
Yeah, and, usually... So, nothing got announced till it was pretty well advanced.
Yeah.
Which I think is the good thing. I mean, when I've been in this sort of position in the past, I've always been said, "Oh, can we make an announcement? Can we make an announcement?" And everyone's gone, don't. Because all that'll happen is you'll make an announcement and then you'll forever afterwards be asked what's happening.
Yeah,
you won't be able to say anything. So, how much does it really help to make the big announcement if it then doesn't happen? And so, this time we did obviously get pretty close, and hence announcements got made and so on. But it didn't quite happen on that round. But perhaps the next round.
Yeah.
It's like Sauron attacking Gondor. He gets a bit closer each time.
Yeah,
maybe next time Sauron attacks, he'll capture the White Tower. Any day now, probably. I don't know. You don't really find out what happened after the end of Lord of the Rings, do you?
Yeah. And speaking of success earlier, and one of the things that have been super, super popular right now is obviously the more appearance of cozy fantasy and also romantasy. And do you ever see yourself writing one?
What, cozy fantasy or romantasy?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I suppose you could say that the Devils does have elements of those things.
Exactly. Right.
I don't think that I've never thought of these genre titles as all that kind of straitjacketing. People like to put things in a box, but often they don't fit very comfortably. And whenever people really try and talk about them, the boxes quickly dissolve. Grimdark being the classic example that no one can ever actually agree
Oh yeah,
what
yeah. It's
it
so
is or what book fit in it, and no one really has the same opinion about what it is,
Yeah.
And likewise, what really makes something cozy fantasy? I mean, it's quite hard to define. It's a mood for
Yeah.
sure. But
True.
you might say that something like the Belgariad was quite cozy fantasy back in the day, So it's not as though it's absolutely new.
Yeah.
There was a sort of a fashion for grimmer and more cynical stuff for a while, and now there's a sort of a fashion for. But I don't know. I mean, things become popular, and there's a kind of an interest in them. I mean, the Romantasy is different, I would say, because that is commercially absolutely immense.
Yeah.
But then I suppose I see that as, similar to the urban fantasy thing that happened around True Blood and so on in the kind of noughties. There was a huge kind of excitement around that kind of stuff, which wasn't totally dissimilar. But I mean, the Devils as a sort of a mismatched group of people, finding their way. I mean, it's just very violent.
Yeah.
It's incredibly violent, cynical, cozy fantasy. It
And
also has romance.
and
It's just very violent, cynical romance, cozy romance fantasy. Cozy romantasy.
That's a good way to put it.
Cozantasy.
Cozantasy or grim cozy.
Grim cozy. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. All things to all men. So I mean, I suppose I kind of write what I want to write, and who knows? You no one's immune to the zeitgeist, are they?
Yeah.
You sort of see what's out there and what's working, and who's reading and what they want to read, and that's all part of the kind of assessment you make when you think about what you want to write. And then, of course, when you actually sit down to do it, who knows what actually
come up
emerges. It's kind of a weird book, I guess, The Devils, in a way. I don't know. Would you say it's kind of a weird book? Or is it not that weird?
It's not that weird, I think.
No.
It's just...
But that's the thing.
Wild.
There's things in it that are weird. It's quite hard to categorize. I mean, what would you categorize it? Would you say it's epic fantasy? I'm not sure I would say it's epic fantasy. Oh, you would, yeah?
Yeah.
Right.
But more mission-based, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. The storyline is more mission-based. I certainly loved it, and I read it together with other readers who managed to get the advanced reading copy, and we had a blast talking about it.
Oh, nice. That's good.
Yeah, so I think many people will love it as well. Yeah, it's different and also at the same time similar to the First Law too. There are elements of the First Law that you can see in the Devils, but overall it is a different kind of book.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's kind of broadly what I was aiming for. If it works,
it works for me.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it works. We'll see how it works more generally. It's certainly looking really good ahead of time.
Yeah,
but
we can never tell.
No,
never tell. Speaking of this one, because we are right now in the middle of going to be on the release of the Devils, and right now it seems like positive. It's super successful, I think. So when do you think you will return to the world of the First Law? I mean, people will be asking about this, so I just have to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose so. This is a 3-book contract, and I'm getting towards the end of a draft, or 2/3 of the way through a draft of the second one now.
Yeah.
So I think the aim is to get the second one out kind of towards the end of the year 2026.
2026. Okay, that means
so sort of 16-18 months after the first, something like that. August, September kind of time, I suppose. And that's not a definite yet because I haven't written the book, so I'll see how I get on. But then I need to write the third of these, and I suppose then it depends a little bit what's kind of what's worked, what it feels like there's the most excitement and hunger for. I mean, if the Devils is stupendously stratospherically successful, makes Sarah J. Maas cry because of its immense success or whatever, or just make fans and cry, I don't know, make someone cry other than me, then maybe the momentum will be to continue to write that. It's hard to know.
But Gillian is still your editor, right, Gillian?
Yeah.
What does she think?
I mean, she daren't tell me what she really thinks, I suspect. No, what does she think? I mean, what does she think of the Devils?
Yeah,
Or,
overall.
well, I mean, she's generally been really positive and encouraging about it. I think she thinks it was an interesting thing. I mean, it did go out, I think, to other publishers early on, and Gollancz had to bid for it, and so they obviously decided it was worth bidding for. They might have chosen not to. They read the first quarter or something, and were like, "Okay, we can probably sell this, maybe."
Okay.
And
Yeah, I
so,
mean,
she's into
all
it, but
your
I suppose
books.
you what? Sorry,
She edited all your books, right?
apart from the Shattered Sea, yeah. So that was
Okay.
at Voyager. So Jane Johnson and Natasha Barden edited that.
Okay.
But yeah, all the others, all the First Law ones, and she obviously was the person who first kind of picked me from the slush pile, as it were.
Wow. We're all thankful.
Yeah, and so she's been very positive about it. But I suppose it's every book is a sort of opportunity to, especially a new series, new world, new characters, is a kind of opportunity to. It's an interesting publishing opportunity to change the branding, to try and reach a different audience, to take things in a different direction, open it out, be more mainstream, all those things. So we'll see how that goes. Fingers crossed.
So before we get to the end of the interview, I only have 2 more questions. And according to you, in your own words, what can new and old readers of your books expect from the Devils? Disappointment, best book of all time, the most successful book of all time?
New and old readers.
Yeah.
I suppose, well, old readers, readers of the First Law and things, it is a not dissimilar tone. It's multi-point of view, behind the eyes, and try to dig into the characters and the personalities and capture the voice of a sort of rogues gallery of weird, violent, strange characters, maybe even more so than the First Law, because they're werewolves and elves and other strange supernatural things. It has so it has very much the same sort of tone, the mixture of the grotesque and the ludicrous. It's probably a little bit more overtly comic than the First Law is. A little bit less cynical, though still pretty cynical. So I think readers of the First Law will recognise a lot that is similar, but it's a bit faster moving and kind of simpler, perhaps, and it's pretty action packed.
It is. I love it. Yeah, you're good at
that. And I think hopefully readers of the First Law will still like it, but it's also, it's much higher on the fantastical elements and the kind of magic and the monsters and things of that kind. Though it's kind of nominally set in our world, it kind of has a lot of magic and weird monsters and all kinds of fantastical nonsense going on.
Yeah. So there it is. So for the final question, this is the last one, and it's kind of like a joke, I guess, because you mentioned that you played Elden Ring during the time of writing The Devils. So what game are you playing right now to write the second book?
I'm playing Crusader Kings. Crusader Kings 3. But then I'm always playing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing new?
Well, I could have logged. I could have written probably another 3 or 4 books in the amount of hours I put in Crusader Kings.
Okay, yeah.
So I play that a lot. It's a very, very good game. What else have I been playing? I haven't actually been playing. I played Helldivers quite a lot.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which is actually a lot of fun. I think that's a very that's a cool game, because again it has that slightly ludicrous joke quality, really not taking itself too seriously, which I think is always important.
The game looked insane, man. Helldivers.
Yeah, it's been a big hit, right? I
believe. Yeah, it's totally a big hit. I haven't played it, but many authors have asked me to play it. I think they want to kill me, I guess.
Well, you tend to participate in killing various aliens
Yeah,
more the
yeah.
thing. It's very Starship Troopers. Very close to Starship
Mhm.
Troopers is my kind of take on it.
Yeah.
Other than that, video game wise, yeah. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
Oh, okay.
Talking
Oh,
about Eastern Europe,
yeah.
medieval Eastern Europe, that is a
Yeah.
brilliant kind of
This is the second one, right? The second one.
second one. Yeah. So the
Oh,
first
yeah.
one also great, but which I played a while back. But yeah, this one is a fantastic kind of evocation of 14th century Bohemia, if that's your
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And it's just very kind of feels like a very authentic, while not being too weighed down by its authenticity, kind of feel of the medieval era, much more so than a lot of video games. It feels kind of, it captures some of the alienness of the medieval mindset in the way that I think good historical fiction does.
Yeah.
And video games, don't often manage. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that one. It was
Well,
good.
there it is. So yeah, that's pretty much the end of this conversation with Joe Abercrombie, the man behind the First Law, Shattered Sea, and now the Devils. And by the time this video is posted, the Devils will be out in US and in the UK. So make sure to get it. Make this guy another bestseller book.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I need your help here.
So I would say thank you so much, Joe, for coming to my channel again, and it was a
No,
pleasure
thank you. Been a
meet you
pleasure as
at
always.
WorldCon. Yeah, I got to meet you at WorldCon. But oh yeah, speaking of that, I think people will want to know: are you going to any cons this year?
So I'm going to be in Villas Celsius in Spain, where I often am.
Yeah.
I make most of those in July, and I'm going to be
Okay.
probably in Madrid and Barcelona just before that.
Okay.
And then I might well be at World Fantasy towards the end of the year, but I haven't actually committed to that yet because I might end up just being quite burnt out after all the events in May. I might just want to kind of put my head down for a little while after that.
Yeah, that's true. So no WorldCon this year?
No, I mean, I tend to go to the European ones.
Oh yeah.
WorldCon. I'll tend to be at the European ones, but I don't often make the US ones.
Yeah.
I might be at the there's a National Book Fair in Washington in September. I might be at that. Apparently, but it's not confirmed yet. But in terms of the sort of genre-specific cons, World Fantasy would be the one this year.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much, Joe, for coming to my channel. It means a lot.
It's a pleasure.
I wish you success for the Devils.
Thank you. Likewise.
Bye-bye.
Bye.